24 hours ago, we just had the breaking news that Kabatu, and the sex offender who had been mistakenly released from prison, had been deported. Very strong statement from the Home Office. But we were discussing this on the news panel because a few weeks before, Paul Brand from ITV had shown that often when people were removed, they were paid money to leave the country. And we were wondering what had happened here. And so we put this to the Minister at 8:30, the Asylum Borders Minister, Alex Norris, and he didn't know the answer to the question. Well, at least he didn't at 8:30. Have a look. Can you just tell us, was any money paid to Kabatu for him to be returned to Ethiopia?
You know, on the point of kind of deportation and removal, you know, I think in substance it's the same point. He had maintained through the court hearing that he wanted to go and he was removed. I can't tell you on the cash piece. I know that early in the process he had asked for that and was denied, whether there was
Immigration Minister on a massively sensitive case where the Home Secretary has been very, very clear that he has been deported. And you're telling me you've come on our programme and you can't tell our viewers whether Kabatu received thousands of pounds from the UK taxpayer to return to Ethiopia. Are you really telling me that you don't know the answer to that question?
Well, Ed, you would know that ministers are not involved in the operational movements that happened overnight.
Wow. Anyway, it turned out 2 hours later that there was a cash payment, £500, not because he was forcibly removed, he was voluntarily removed. He was, they say, deported, but they chose to make this payment. But they say ministers weren't involved in that. That was an operational decision. But it wasn't a good look for the government yesterday.
No, I mean, none of this has been a good look for the government. The fact that, I mean, the whole case is absolutely terrible, of course, from his assaulting this girl and this young woman, then to the absolute shambles of him being sort of released and him trying to come back to the prison and he himself going, actually, I think I am needed to be deported. And they're like, here's 20 quid, off you go to Chelmsford Station. I mean, the whole thing has been terrible. I think at this point, I think I'm of the mindset, just get him out of the... And I'm sure that's probably where people were after all the kind of shambles. I'm not 100% correct in this, but I think sometimes money is paid and offered to people to go. And I think with the few people that did go to Rwanda, it was on a voluntary basis. And I think you do... But look, it's not good. The whole thing's not good. But I think the really important thing is that this person has now left the premises.
So I think the issue of the payment is quite interesting. I think the minister was fair. As a minister, he's not going to be the one signing off on the £500 that this man was given. But the suspicion has always been that, or has been, that he was given the money so that he wouldn't claim asylum. I read that. And that, I think, opens up a whole question about people's ability to claim asylum, you know, once they've come and he's been convicted. And then all of a sudden he can say, actually, I'm an asylum seeker. And that seems to be a total abuse of the system.
There was, I think, a question as to whether he would have sought at the very last minute legal redress again. That would have delayed things. They had 5 people travelling with him. They had paid for the tickets for the flights. It would have been thousands of pounds. So you can see the problem is that when we're talking about the cost of living crisis, people worrying about the heating bills, and the government says, you know, that we are able to provide £200 or £300 or £400 a year for people to help with their bills, and then this is £500 for a convicted sex offender to leave the country.
I think it's very important.
It's just a bad look.
But I think viewers and the public are right to ask, because the £500 looks almost like a bribe for him to go. Exactly, a sweetener to facilitate him leaving, and I think that's wrong.
And there are victims here.
Exactly.
What message does this give to victims?
Exactly. He should be deported.
This kind of crime.
You know, he should be deported, and that's it. That's the end of it. He should be given money.
Look, this is a terrible look, right? Completely. But imagine the conversation we'd be having today if he had exercised his legal right and he had frustrated the process and he was still here. The conversation we'd be having, actually, at that point, 500 quid is probably quite a small price to have paid to get this person gone.
But it's actually a lot of money. I think it's roughly a sort of annual income in Ethiopia, where he's gone back to
20 months annual wage.
20 months,
yeah,
exactly. So it's 20.
He then arrived in Ethiopia and did an interview with Sky News where he said that he had tried to voluntarily give himself up.
I don't think he
to
tried
a
very
police
hard.
station.
I don't think he tried.
I know
he was
the
just
Met have been
wandering
very
around
tough
Finsbury
in
Park.
saying this isn't. We can actually read a statement. A Met police spokesman said the Met is not aware of any evidence to support the claims that Kibati approached officers on Saturday morning. The actions of officers who responded to the sightings on Sunday morning show how seriously they were taking the manhunt. Kibati's actions on the morning of his arrest were more like those of someone trying to avoid officers, not trying to hand himself in. But it just kind of adds to the Met.
Oh, listen, it just adds to the complete sort of fact that the question I still cannot get over, and I visited a prison recently. They're really difficult, tough places. You know, the staff are under a lot of pressure. I accept that. But when you have probably got the most high-profile prisoner in the country who has sparked huge riots, polarised society, created a kind of tinderbox situation, and you would not think that the authorities, whoever involved, I know operational, but from ministers to prison governors to whatever, said, get this right.
Yes.
If there's one person you've got to get right,
was extraordinary.
I mean,
you've probably visited. I mean, I had a prison, a women's prison in my constituency. They're very difficult places to get in and out of.
They are.
You're checked all the time. You know, you've got to be. There's a holding pen before you're allowed in or out. So the fact that this guy was released is extraordinary.
I was actually responsible for 3 years for youth justice with Jack Straw when I was children's minister. I went to a lot of prison visits, and actually the procedures are normally very tough,
very rigorous,
and very onerous and very rigorous. So clearly something went badly wrong in this case. I just think, look, my personal view, I think Alex Norris is a good minister. He's one of the best performers. But on something this high profile, he should have anticipated that question and had a better answer in the morning, because it was dragged out of them 2 hours later. It's just never a good look.
Listen, I hear, and also, you know, just to have a curious mind to say, look, what's going on here? Even though you guys might have made the operational decision, but just tell me what's happened, because I need to be fully.
I mean, particularly that was his brief. I mean, you made the point very well in the interview that was his brief. He should have known more of the detail.
Should we talk about Rachel Reeves? Not about the budget, actually, which I'm sure maybe this is a good distraction or a bad one. But let's talk about what's happened with this discovery that she didn't obtain a licence for renting out her family home. Because, of course, as Chancellor, you get another home, don't you? As you
slightly unfair to ask Kwasi about this, because it's not clear he was in Downing Street long enough.
Well, I didn't go in. We were only going to have 2 years anyway, but at the end it was 6 weeks, so I never actually moved into.
But it's not uncommon, obviously, for ministers to rent out their home, as we saw with that.
So my view on this is, as far as I can understand, she went through a letting agency.
Yes.
So they're the ones who should really have made sure that all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. I mean, I could be political about it and say it's outrageous that she did it, but actually, if the letting agency was responsible for letting the property, I think that the onus was on them.
But how is that different to Angela Rayner's case?
Well, that's a totally different case, because that was a tax, you know, and she
had
led the
underpaid.
charge. Yeah, exactly, and that's wrong.
But she also had said she'd gone through conveyances and that she'd taken advice. So both ministers had taken advice and been given wrong advice.
Well, it wasn't.
And had acted on it.
So with a letting agency, they know about the property and the rules that apply.
Which are quite unusual in this particular part
that's right.
of London.
Yes,
that's not normal, is it?
No.
And if they'd leased or they'd helped to rent properties out in that area, they should have known the procedure. So I think it was very much on them. Tax affairs, especially when you're the housing secretary, that's a slightly different, a more serious situation.
And Keir Starmer appears to have come out quite differently for both of them. He said in response to Rachel Reeves's letter about it, saying she's referring herself to her own independent ethics advisor, that actually further investigation, the Prime Minister says, is not necessary. The ministerial code makes clear that in certain circumstances, an apology is a sufficient resolution. Is that the end of it? I think so. And also, can I just say, Kwasi, I think it's really admirable of you to just be to be fair, but I think it's really admirable of you just to not be totally partisan, just be really
well, I can be partisan on the other side.
Yeah, fine, we'll get into the dinner. But I just think that's admirable. I think that's admirable. I think that's very refreshing. Kemi Badenoch wants a full investigation. Well, of course she does. But on this, I'll tell you what's interesting about this is it's not that Keir Starmer has made the decision that the ministerial code hasn't been broken. His independent ethics advisor has looked at this and said, look,
She made a mistake. A mistake was made for the reason that Kwasi has articulated. She's fessed up straight away. She's not been like, oh, nothing to say. I think the difference with Angela Rayner is she did fight it for quite a long time, whereas it was an honest mistake. She's, you know, as soon as it's come to light, she's gone to the independents, but he's come back to the Prime Minister and said, look, she's apologised, she's going to rectify it, we can sort of move. So I think that's the difference.
And for me, with the Angela Rayner thing, because I was in government at the time, and Nadeem Zahawi is a friend of mine, he was a colleague in government, and the way she went for him on the tax affairs meant, for me, it was very hypocritical, her stance when she was in government.
I think to be fair to Angela Rayner,
that was an issue.
She has a complex life and a complex transaction. Come to light that something may be different from what she expected, because she didn't think she took independent advice from a barrister. Very difficult because she was not allowed, because of her former partner, to release the information. Went to the ethics
but it wasn't the barrister
who then said, you know, that you have apologised, but you didn't live up to the higher standards.
No,
I mean, she was judged by quite a high standard.
But it was the conveyancer. I think she was referred to the local conveyancer, who then put their hand up and
but she
said,
also went to a KC for a second opinion.
So, and the local conveyancer essentially threw her under the bus and said, you know, we didn't give any advice.
But just to point out, just for clarity, that in the Rachel Reeves scenario, failing to obtain a licence when required is a criminal offence, and it can be punishable with an unlimited fine, a fine of up to £30,000 as an alternative to prosecution. So it's not a minor issue.
No.
It's not a
It's
minor
not issue, but I just think, look, honestly, I think the fact that the independent advisors come back and said, look, as soon as she was alerted to it, she's disclosed everything, she's apologised, she's sort of sought to sort of rectify it. And honestly, I think if there was any impropriety from that point of view, he's very clear about that. I think the biggest story is the budget, because that's
breaking the manifesto.
That is going to affect more people's lives.
Yes.
To be clear, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying there about the Chancellor. All I'm asking is whether actually Angela Rayner was held to a higher standard. I think Angela Rayner had a very tough time.
I think she'd have a tough time, but I think the way that played out was different.
I think there was the sums of money involved, the fact that she hadn't paid the full tax, the fact that she'd been hypocritical in opposition, I think made her position very
Let's move on to, as you say, the budget, I think, is obviously the bigger story here. We don't often say that Kemi Bade not skewered the Prime Minister at PMQs, but in fact, she did. Let's take a look.
She did.
Mr. Speaker, in their manifesto last year, Labour promised not to increase income tax, not to increase national insurance, and not to increase VAT. Does the Prime Minister still stand by his promises?
Yes.
In its manifesto, Labour promised not to increase income tax, not to increase national insurance, and not to increase VAT. Does the Prime Minister still stand by his promises?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm glad that the Leader of the Opposition is now finally talking about the economy. The budget is on the 26th of November and we will lay out our plans. But I can tell the House now that we will build a stronger economy, we will cut NHS waiting lists and deliver a better future for our country.
Well, Mr. Speaker, yes. What a fascinating answer. It is not the same answer that I received when I asked exactly the same question, word for word, on the 9th of July. Then the Prime Minister replied with just one word, yes, and then he sat down with a smug grin on his face. What's changed in the past 4 months?
That was a very, very effective demonstration of how quickly politics can change. In July, it was so easy for the Prime Minister to say, yes, we will stick to the manifesto. Yes, one-word answer. Yesterday in the House of Commons, 1,000 words were used to try and avoid the simple answer.
Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Well, clearly what's happened is that the economic situation picture has changed. The OBR has revised down productivity. The black hole is larger. So the government will have to look at other ways to raise, 50 billion, I think, was the last figure I saw, to fill the black hole. And so the Prime Minister simply couldn't be as assertive and clear as he was only in July. But as you said, things have changed a lot, and I'm afraid he looked very shifty yesterday.
Yeah, and the Telegraph's headline is Reeves eyes a 2p income tax rise. And just sort of, the thing is, of course, it's not just about what happened in July. I think Susanna asked at the party conference, are you going to stick to your manifesto commitment not to increase tax, national insurance or VAT on working people? Starmer said the manifesto stands. She asked again. He said, of course we stand by the manifesto.
Play it, right?
Third time, we stand by the manifesto.
We can actually play the
yeah, we can listen to it, yeah.
Are you going to stick to your manifesto commitment not to increase tax, national insurance and VAT on working people?
The manifesto stands, and since we've been in power...
Up until and including the budget?
Of course, we stand by the manifesto.
So you won't increase national insurance or income tax or VAT on working people?
We stand by the manifesto.
See, I'm not sure that I agree with Kwasi that a lot has changed. If you go back to May, June, July, very many of the independent experts and National Institute were saying that there is going to be a 20 to 30 billion pound gap in the finances. It is true, the Office of Budget Responsibility have now said they are going to downgrade the growth numbers, but everybody was expecting that for months and months. The thing which has changed was before the summer, the government thought they could stick to the manifesto. When it came to the party conference, they came up with a line, which is the manifesto stands, which felt kind of unusual words. There was clearly a conversation going on. It feels now as though they are, if they haven't decided to break the manifesto, it's certainly a very, very live debate now happening within government. The politics has shifted quite a lot in Downing Street.
Can I just say quickly on that? The issue that they have is the ongoing costs, because the mistake they made last year was to say that this was a one-off tax raise and they probably wouldn't do the same thing next year. What they need to do now, and I think their worry, is that they're going to have to, if they're going to increase the taxes next year, they might as well just do it now so that they have a higher revenue base. Because the black hole, as you will know, is calculated on a yearly basis, but they need to get ongoing revenue for the rest of the Parliament. So the way to do that, one way, would be to go against their manifesto promise and raise taxes. So you've got all that revenue coming in going forward.
Quite something for our viewers.
Yeah. I mean, look, Rachel Reeves is saying Brexit is massively affecting the growth in this country. The Governor of the Bank of England has also said that it's going to continue to hurt the country for many, many years to come. And the OBR seem to agree.
Well, it's true. I mean, it is true. I mean, Brexit has, I mean, we don't relitigate the whole thing, but Brexit has had a negative effect on this economy. It's not the only thing. There are other deep structural problems that go back pre the financial crisis, to be honest. We have got an economy with very low productivity. Our growth has stalled for quite some time. Parties of all different hues for many, many decades always said, you know what, everybody, it's all about growing the pie and everyone can get... This pie ain't been growing for a long, long time. So there are very deep structural problems.
There isn't going to be much sympathy for Rachel Reeves like that, is there?
But I think personally, and I've said this before on this programme, look, I understand why the Labour government, because Labour doesn't win many elections in political history. There's been 58 Prime Ministers, only 7 Labour Prime Ministers. And Ed will know this. I think Labour were very, very paranoid in the run-up to the general election. They wanted to make sure that their manifesto was as safe as possible, this Ming-Vaz strategy. I think in hindsight, they boxed themselves in way too tight around pulling these big 3 levers, hence why they had to do kind of footery things that annoyed everybody, like the winter fuel allowance and farmers' things. So now they are going to have to sort of... But I think if they're going to do it, they have to be clear with the public when the time comes. Rachel Reeves has to sit down, do lots of interviews, look straight down the barrel of the camera. And Kwasi's right. If you're going to raise... If you're going to break your manifesto promise and you're going to raise it by 1p, you may as well raise it by 2. You're going to get the pain anyway.
So they need to get the revenue coming in. So obviously I don't agree with the Brexit thing, because you look at France and Germany, they're the heart of the EU, they're comparable economies to us, and their growth isn't much better. So unless you're saying that if we were there, we'd be doing much better than them, I don't see Brexit as a factor. The second thing...
Come on, Corey. Look, I think most people who were not kind of hardline ideologues on either side would say Brexit has hit our economy, but it's not new.
It's not, OK.
We knew it a year ago and 2 years ago and 3 years ago.
Exactly.
Even Mel Strider agrees, and he's on the show later.
No, so
he doesn't explain why it's got worse.
Yes, many of us have been here. So last year, they said the black hole was 22 billion that they inherited. They raised taxes by 40 billion. And so everyone thought, everything's OK. They've filled the black hole and they've steadied the economy. That's what they said. Now, this year, the black hole is 50 billion. So clearly things have changed. and they have to blame other people. Governments never say, actually, our policies didn't work. They're never that frank. So they have to look at other people and other things to blame for the situation they're in. Brexit is one of them, the Tories, Nigel Farage.
But the Tories, the inheritance, the mini budget, all of that did have an effect.
No, but they were dealing with the problem last year.
But it is their job to grow the economy.
Yeah,
sure,
and
they're failing to do that.
But context
But
is
the
also
point
important.
of it
Absolutely, but I'm not sure the public really will feel that.
No, they won't.
No,
and
but
the
what
public will see through the facts when they try and blame everyone.
But look, I think what the Chancellor's going to have to do is be very, very honest with the public. And I think, certainly, like when I discuss this on my radio show, and I've asked my listeners and I've, when I go around and do my political talks, I'm sure we've all had, say to people, ask people in the audience, do you think, if it comes down to it, will she have to break her manifesto? And actually, people, they're not over the moon about it, but I think the public knows what's coming down the track. I'm not saying they're going to like it.
I think if they did that, my view is that that's it. The credibility is gone.
When's the last time there was a rise in the rates of income tax?
The basic rate is 75.
1975.
75 is the basic rate.
I know, but taxes have been going up.
They have. But
they went up under your lot as well.
We try to reverse them and look at it.
Yeah, 70
The last Parliament was the largest rise in taxation under the Conservatives in any Parliament since the Second World War.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
and you're right about the basic rate. And successive governments, successive chancellors have looked at the basic rate and they've always shrunk from increasing it. The basic rate of income.
If you're advising Rachel Reeves and this is what she's going to have to do, what argument would you make to explain to the British people why it's the right decision to make for the nation in this budget?
So if she's going to put up taxes, she'll have to say, we all have to shoulder the burden because these are extraordinary times. I'm sure she'll say something like that, regardless. And the way to do it, this, the easiest levers are probably VAT and income tax. I suspected that they would probably do VAT because there's an element of choice in VAT.
But they are very worried about inflation being high.
That's right. That's right. But then you have to have the bank, having the right interest rate policy. But I think VAT is more sellable than income tax. And actually, as you say, the basic rate hasn't moved in 50 years of income tax.
I think you also have to say, I'm not sure whether the right politics of this is a big row about whose fault it is.
Sure.
I think the better thing to say is if you want to have a national health service which really delivers for us and our borders secure and to feel safe in a dangerous Europe with Putin and to get the education system we need and to invest for the long term, we're going to have to do more. And these are the things which will make our economy stronger and fairer for the future.
But to be fair, they could
come with us on that journey.
They could have said that before putting it in their manifesto.
Although to be fair, they didn't know.
They could have been honest.
But I think about defence. I mean, that's all happened. The defence stuff has happened more recently.
Yes.
But I think Ed is right. However, I think the other thing that if she is going to do this, what she will have to also have with it is quite difficult, tough stuff on welfare reform.
But they can't get that.
I think they're
the MPs won't.
But let's just look at the last reshuffle. Who did they move into welfare? Pat McFadden, who is seen as a real. So I think if you're going to say to the public, we're going to take more tax off you, they're also going to have to say we're going to have to look at some kind of spending.
A couple of U-turns in their back
but the
pocket
big
that don't look
problem.
very
I mean, I read
good
the manifesto, and it couldn't have been clearer. It said we're not going to increase the taxes on working people. And they could have just left it at that.
Yeah.
And since you were last on, Aisha, we now have a new deputy leader of the Labour Party who's been elected by the members. And Lucy Powell, I mean, what's her view on whether there should be more welfare cuts, even if that risks rising child poverty?
Well, she has said that she thinks that the two-child cap should go, and that is a big, that's a big sort of discussion.
Cost more, not less.
Cost more.
Yes, but that is a big discussion going on. She's been very clear about that.
She said that taking the winter allowance away from pensioners was a mistake.
Yeah, but I think it was. I think even the government have conceded that. I think even the government. But I think we've got to be honest.
What I'm saying is her mandate from the Labour Party is not to cut welfare.
I know, but Ed, I think we have to be realistic. She's literally just come as deputy leader. The idea that she's going to be writing the budget with Rachel Reeves right now is slightly.
But she represents a wing of the party.
She does represent a wing of the party.
Exactly.
How Parliament will react.
That's right.
Look, the reality is, actually, I've spoken to a lot of MPs who were remember, a lot of people also were against how the welfare was done because of how it was politically handled, right?
Well, it looked like it was about cuts.
Yes, and it wasn't a story about getting people, and people felt they were kind of railroaded into it as well. There wasn't a kind of proper discussion. So let's see what happens on this. It will be difficult. Look, the government has already signalled it's going to do something on welfare. Special educational needs is something, because that's a rise in cost in terms of local councils. So these are going to be very difficult. But this budget is not going to be easy. It's going to be very difficult.
Finally, can we talk about Christmas dinner? Because
too soon.
It is too soon. I've seen Christmas lights going up in various places already. I'm not even joking. OK, so a fifth of younger British adults, 25 to 34-year-olds, say they'll be serving up the likes of curry, pasta or pizza this year instead of traditional Christmas. The country has gone to the dogs. I've said it. It's dreadful.
The thought of having pizza
on Christmas Day?
Completely.
Pasta on Christmas Day?
Look, I'm a live and let live sort of person. They can eat what they want.
You're a libertarian.
Well, I wouldn't quite put it that way. But they can eat what they want. I mean, sure.
Look, we live in to quote Katie Lamb, a culturally incoherent world, and people can do what they like. However, I'm having turkey.
I'm about to get deported for what I'm about to say. Listen, I don't really love Christmas dinner that much. It's okay. I don't like Christmas pudding. I cannot.
Yeah, but it's
I don't like it.
No,
I don't like it.
It's okay.
But do you know what? I just mainly like having cheese and Baileys.
That's apparently you're in the younger quarter of the people, because they say that cheese is their favourite nibble.
Cheese, no,
Christmas is a very
Christmas dinner on a pizza?
No.
No. Christmas dinner on a pizza?
No, but I'd have a pizza on Christmas.
She'd have a pizza.
I will be barbecuing a goose.
Wow.
Gosh, you.
Prunes and armagnac.
Wow.
5-hour cook outside of the club.
Everyone round their heads.
Of course.
Thank
Nothing
you.
but the best for former Labour ministers.